The calendar read August 14th, 2011, a Sunday evening in Santa Barbara, California. At an outdoor concert at the Santa Barbara Bowl, 11,000 people had come to hear Carlos Santana play. The show had been running for 40 minutes, and the crowd was deep in it. Standing, moving. The summer night warm enough that the mountains behind the stage had gone soft in the dark. In the third row from the back, on the far left aisle, a 72-year-old woman named Cecilia Ruiz was standing alone, her eyes closed, singing, not to anyone, not for anyone. She did not have the voice she once had. She sang anyway. Nobody around her was watching. Nobody around her was listening. Carlos Santana, from the stage, was doing both. The Santa Barbara Bowl sits in a natural hollow in the hills above the city, the bowl of it shaped by the land, open to the sky, the stage at the low end and the seats rising in tiers toward the mountains. In August, the air comes off the Pacific in the evenings, cool enough to remind you the ocean is there even when you cannot see it. And the sound of a full band at that venue does something particular. It fills the bowl and then rises and disperses into the dark above the last row of seats, in a way that makes the music feel like it belongs to the sky as much as to the audience. People who have seen shows there remember the sound differently than they remember shows anywhere else. They remember it as something they were inside rather than something they heard. 11,000 seats. 11,000 people who had bought tickets, had driven from the coast and the valley and the city, had found their rows and their sections and their particular spot within the larger geometry of a crowd gathered for one thing. The lawn section in the back was a shifting, loose arrangement of blankets and lawn chairs, and couples and groups of friends who stood and sat and stood again as the music moved them. Cecilia Ruiz had a ticket for the lawn. She had come alone because she always came alone now, and because the ticket had been a gift, and because she had not seen Carlos Santana play since 1978. Carlos was 3 songs from the end of the main set. The band was deep in a long instrumental passage, the kind that builds slowly over 6 or 8 minutes, that finds a phrase and inhabits it and moves through it and comes out the other side somewhere different. He knew this passage the way he knew his own breathing. His hands knew it. His feet knew it. Part of his attention was always somewhere else during the long passages, listening to the room, feeling what the crowd was doing, reading the particular quality of attention 11,000 people produce when they are genuinely inside something versus when they are waiting for the next recognizable song. He was reading the crowd. His eyes moved across the lawn section the way they always did, the sweep from left to right that had become involuntary over 40 years of playing to large rooms. He saw the shifting of bodies, the phones in the air, the people turned toward each other in conversation, the children on shoulders. He saw the woman, third row from the back, far left aisle, standing still in a crowd that was moving, eyes closed, her hands at her sides, fingers slightly spread, the posture of someone who has given themselves over to something completely. Her lips moving. He could not hear her. He was on a stage 40 yards away with a band playing at full volume. But he could see what she was doing, and he could see that nobody around her was watching, and he could see that she was not watching them either. She was somewhere else. She was completely, utterly somewhere else. He played the phrase through to its end. He handed the song to the band. He walked to the front of the stage and crouched down to speak to the monitor engineer in the pit. He said something. The engineer nodded. Carlos stood. He walked to the side of the stage. He walked down the steps. He walked into the crowd. Cecilia Ruiz had been singing since she was 8 years old in a small church in Guanajuato, Mexico, where her grandmother had brought her every Sunday morning and sat her in the second pew and let the music do what music does to children who are paying attention. She had a voice then that the choir director noticed and cultivated for 7 years, a soprano that climbed without forcing, that sat easily in registers that other voices reached for and sometimes missed. She had come to California at 19. She had worked in hospitality, first as a housekeeper in hotels, later as a floor supervisor, later as the manager of housekeeping operations at a resort in Montecito, where the work was demanding and the standards were precise, and she was very good at both. She had married at 24, had 2 sons, had been widowed at 51 when her husband Marcos suffered a stroke at his work desk on a Tuesday in October. She had continued working because the work was what she had, and because stopping would have been the wrong answer to grief. She had never stopped singing. This was the thing about her that her sons did not fully know. She sang in the car. She sang in the shower. She sang when she was alone in the big house in Goleta where she had lived for 30 years, and which was too large for one person now, but which she could not bring herself to leave because every room had Marcos in it somewhere. She sang at the kitchen window in the mornings, softly, the songs from the church in Guanajuato, and the songs from the radio in 1974, and the songs that had no origin she could name, that existed somewhere between memory and composition, that her voice found in the same way her feet found the stairs in the dark. She had not sung in front of anyone in many years. The ticket to the Santa Barbara Bowl had come from her younger son, Anders, who knew she had loved Santana since she was 19 years old, and who had bought the ticket 6 months in advance and given it to her at Christmas with a card that said simply, "Go, Mama, you deserve a night that's yours." She had almost not gone. She had stood at the door with her keys for several minutes before deciding. She had driven the 18 miles from Goleta and parked and made her way to the lawn and found her spot on the far left aisle, where there was a little more room and a slight angle that let her see the stage between the shoulders of the people in front of her. When the music started, something happened that she had not predicted. Not the music itself. She had known the music for 40 years. What she had not predicted was the particular combination of the music and the August night and the open sky and 11,000 people who had all made the same decision to be in this bowl at this hour, and all of it together did something to the thing she kept sealed most of the time. The thing behind the work and the management and the efficient operation of her days. It opened it. She had not been prepared for that. She had closed her eyes. She had begun to sing. She sang quietly. The people around her were loud, and she was not loud, and she was not trying to be heard. She was not performing. She was responding, the way a tuning fork responds to a note struck nearby, not a choice, a consequence of what she was made of. She sang the melody of the song the band was playing. She did not know all the words. The words did not matter. The melody mattered. The melody was the part that had always mattered, and she had known it since she was 8 years old in the second pew of a church in Guanajuato, while her grandmother sat beside her and said nothing and let the music do its work. Before we go further, has music ever opened something in you that you had kept closed for a long time? Tell me in the comments. I want to know. The crowd parted for Carlos the way crowds part when someone moves through them with direction. Not because they knew who he was, not at first. Because his movement had the quality of intention, of a man going somewhere specific. People stepped aside without deciding to. He reached the lawn section. He moved along the back, the flat black hat visible above the crowd, the turquoise ring on his hand catching the stage light as he moved. The band continued behind him. The music did not stop. The music would not stop. That was the point of the long passage. It did not need him. For a few minutes, and he knew it. He reached the far left aisle. He reached Cecilia. She had not opened her eyes. She did not know he was there until he was standing beside her, and even then she only knew because the woman to her right made a sound that was not a word, a sharp intake of breath, the sound a person makes when something improbable arrives in front of their eyes, and their brain needs a moment before their mouth can operate. Cecilia opened her eyes. She looked at the man beside her. He was not tall. She had always thought of him as larger, the way you think of people you have seen on stages and on album covers, amplified by context into something beyond ordinary scale. He was not beyond ordinary scale. He was a man in a flat black hat standing beside her in the lawn section, with the stage light reaching them both at an angle, and the band playing behind him, and 11,000 people around them. And he was looking at her with an expression that was not celebrity recognition, and not performance, and not anything she had seen from a stranger before. It was the expression of someone who had come specifically for her, who had left the stage for her, who had seen her from 40 yards away and had made a decision and had arrived. She could not speak. He leaned slightly toward her. Over the music. "Don't stop," he said. She stared at him. "I could hear you from the stage," he said. "Not the sound, the intention." He looked at her the way he had looked at her from the stage, not at her face, but at the whole of her, at what she was doing. "Don't stop." He straightened. He turned toward the stage. He looked at the band. He looked at his guitar, held by his guitar tech at the side of the stage. He looked at Cecilia. He began to sing with her. Not loudly. Not in a way that drew attention from elsewhere. He stood beside her in the third row from the back of the lawn section at the Santa Barbara Bull and sang the melody of his own song into the August night, alongside a 72-year-old woman from Goleta, who had almost not come, and for the length of that phrase, 16 bars, maybe 20. They were the same distance from the music, which is to say no distance at all. The people nearby had gone completely still, not with surprise, though surprise was there, with something more like reverence, the stillness of people who know they are inside a moment that will not happen again and who want to be inside it completely. He sang the final phrase. He looked at her. Her eyes were full. She did not try to prevent this. She was 72 years old, and she had learned the things that were worth preventing and the things that were not. "You have a beautiful voice," he said. "I had a beautiful voice," she said. Her own voice, saying it. He shook his head once. "You have one now." He reached into his shirt pocket. The old pick, edges worn smooth by 4 decades of use, the plastic the color of old amber. Warm from his body, he pressed it into her hand. Her hand closed around it without instruction. "Jimmy gave me this at Woodstock," he said. "He told me the music chooses its people, not the other way." He looked at her closed hand. "It chose you a long time ago. Don't make it wait anymore." He tilted his hat. He turned. He walked back through the crowd, which parted for him again, and climbed the stage steps, and the guitar was in his hands before he reached his mark, and the band found him as he arrived, and the music moved forward. The crowd in the bowl erupted. Not all of them knew what had happened in the lawn section. Most of them did not know. They erupted because the song had reached the place songs reach when everything before them has been building toward them, the peak that justifies the climb. And the peak arrived as Carlos arrived back at his microphone. And it was enormous, and it filled the bowl and rose into the dark above the last row of seats and dispersed into the sky. In the third row from the back, on the far left aisle, Cecilia Ruiz held an old pick in her closed hand and looked at the stage and did not try to manage what was happening in her chest. The woman beside her put a hand on her arm. She did not know Cecilia. She had been a stranger 3 minutes ago. She left her hand there for the rest of the song. Anders found out 3 days later. His phone buzzed at 6 in the morning with a text from a college friend who had been at the show. The text contained a link. Anders clicked it. Someone in the crowd had filmed it. 22 seconds. You could see his mother from behind, her white hair, her still posture, and the man in the hat arriving beside her. And you could not hear what was said. And then you could see them both singing. And then you could see him press something into her hand and leave. 22 seconds. Anders watched it 4 times at his kitchen table before he called her. She answered on the second ring, which meant she was already awake, which meant she had probably been awake for a while. He did not say anything for a moment. "I know," she said. "Mama, I know." She paused. He said not to make it wait anymore. Anders waited. "I've been looking at choir programs," she said. "At the church on Turnpike Road. They have an adult choir. Tuesday evenings." He pressed his lips together. He had learned this from her. When to speak and when to hold the silence and let what needed to settle. "Settle, that's good, Mama," he said. "I sang for 40 years and then I stopped," she said. "I told myself it was because I got old, because the voice changes." A pause. That wasn't it. He waited. I stopped because it felt like something I had shared. She said it slowly, the way you say something you have not said before. With your father. The house in the mornings. He would hear me from the kitchen. She stopped. When he was gone, it felt like singing to an empty room. Andres said nothing. He was 38 years old, and she had never told him this. But an empty room is still a room, she said, and the singing still fills it. I just had to remember that. She went to the choir on the following Tuesday. She has not missed a Tuesday since. The director placed her in the soprano section after the first rehearsal. She was 72 years old, and her voice was not what it had been at 20. But it was clear and true, and it knew where to go. And the women in the section beside her said after the first Sunday performance that something had lifted in the room when she sang. Something had opened, and they could not explain it better than that. She keeps the pick on the kitchen windowsill, the same window where she used to sing in the mornings when Marcos was still in the kitchen below her. She sings there still, in the early mornings before the day asks anything of her. She looks at the pick when she sings. She does not think of it as a stranger's gift. She thinks of it as a reminder of the night the music stopped waiting for her to come back to it and came out into the lawn to find her instead. She thinks Marcos would have liked that story. She thinks he would have laughed. Some people are not lost from the music. The music is waiting for them to stop being afraid of what it will open. On this channel, we make videos to carry what lives inside Carlos Santana's heart to the next generation. If this story moved you, subscribe and turn on notifications. We have more coming. Let's close with something Carlos Santana once said. The most important thing is to be vulnerable enough to let the music come through you, not from you. When you stop protecting yourself from it, that's when it becomes real.